The chandeliers glittered like falling stars above the grand ballroom. White orchids lined the aisle. Crystal glasses caught the light. A harpist played softly in the corner while guests in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos whispered about stock prices and political connections. Outside, black luxury cars stretched down the driveway. Cameras flashed behind the gates. It was more than a wedding. It was a transaction. Daniel Carter adjusted the wrench in his hand and wiped sweat from his forehead. He didn't belong here. Not in this world of silk and champagne. He had been called in last minute. A refrigeration unit in the catering area had malfunctioned. The venue manager had sounded desperate. Big money wedding. No mistakes allowed. Daniel never turned down extra work. Especially not with Lily's school field trip payment due next week. His 7-year-old daughter sat cross-legged near the service entrance, quietly coloring in her notebook. She wore headphones too big for her head, humming softly to herself. Daniel glanced at her and smiled. She was the only reason he kept moving forward some days. 3 years ago, cancer had taken his wife in less than 6 months. Since then, life had become a series of small battles, bills, school lunches, grief that came in waves at night. He finished tightening the bolt and stood. That's when he heard it. A sound so raw it didn't belong in a place this polished. Crying. Not delicate sniffles. Not pre-wedding nerves. This was breaking. At first, he told himself to ignore it. Rich people problems weren't his business. But the sound didn't stop. It echoed down the quiet hallway that led to the bridal suites. Daniel hesitated, then walked toward it. The corridor was empty. Staff had cleared out for the ceremony. At the very end, one door stood slightly open. He knocked gently. Hello. No answer. He pushed the door a little wider. And froze. The bride stood before a full-length mirror, wrapped in a gown that looked like it belonged in a museum. Hand-stitched lace hugged her figure. Diamonds shimmered at her collarbone. A veil cascaded behind her like a waterfall of silk. But her hands were gripping the edge of the vanity as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. Her breathing was shallow. I can't do this, she whispered to herself. Daniel immediately stepped back. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. She turned. Their eyes met. For a moment, time slowed. She wasn't just beautiful. She was terrified. Are you with security? She asked, voice trembling. No. Maintenance. I heard. He trailed off. She laughed, but it wasn't humor. Of course. Maintenance. That's fitting. He started to retreat. I'll leave you to it. Wait. The word came out fragile. He paused. She looked at the closed door behind him, then back at him. They're waiting for me. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I figured. I'm supposed to walk down those stairs in 5 minutes. Her lips quivered. But I can't breathe. Daniel had seen panic attacks before. His wife used to get them during her treatments. He recognized the signs. Try sitting, he said gently. She obeyed without thinking, sinking onto the edge of a velvet chair. I thought I could handle it, she murmured. I've handled worse. Worse than marrying someone you don't want to. Her eyes shot up. How did you? You don't cry like that over someone you love. Silence filled the room. Then she whispered, it's a merger. He frowned. My father built an empire. Tech, real estate, energy. When he died, I took over. Her voice steadied slightly as she shifted into business mode. Our biggest competitor is Adrian's company. The board believes this marriage ensures stability. And what do you believe? Her composure cracked again. I believe I'm about to sign my life away. A knock slammed against the door. Victoria. A male voice, calm, authoritative. It's time. Her shoulders stiffened instantly. That's him, she whispered. The handle rattled slightly. Victoria, don't make this dramatic. Daniel felt something shift in the air. The control in that man's voice wasn't affection. It was ownership. She looked at Daniel, eyes wide. If I walk out there and say no, I lose control of my company. The board will side with him. I could lose everything. Daniel thought about the tiny apartment he shared with Lily. About nights when he'd sat on the bathroom floor after Lily was asleep, wondering how he'd keep everything together. He understood losing everything, but he also understood losing yourself. My wife died 3 years ago, he said quietly. Victoria blinked, surprised. For months before that, I kept telling her we'd fight. We'd win. That we couldn't give up. His jaw tightened slightly. But the last week, she told me she was tired. Not of life. Of fighting for something that was already gone. He looked at her carefully. She said sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop pretending. Another knock. Louder. You have 2 minutes, the voice outside warned. Victoria's breathing quickened. If I don't walk out there, this becomes a scandal. Investors panic. Stocks drop. Daniel shrugged. They recover. My reputation recovers. My future. That's the one you actually get to choose. She stared at him. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. If it's your life, you get to decide who stands next to you in it. Her eyes filled again. You make it sound simple. It is simple, he said softly. Not easy, but simple. The knocking turned into pounding. Victoria, open the door. Security voices echoed faintly behind it. She stood abruptly. Panic flashed across her face. Daniel glanced down the hallway. There's a service exit past the kitchen, he said quickly. Leads to the back lot. Her heart was racing so hard she could hear it in her ears. If I leave, she whispered, there's no going back. Daniel met her gaze. Then don't go back. For a split second, she hesitated. Then something in her expression changed. Resolve. She grabbed her train, lifted it, and ran. They burst into the kitchen. Staff gasped. A bridesmaid screamed. One of the groomsmen shouted, stop her. Daniel pushed through swinging doors and shoved open the metal exit. Sunlight hit her face like oxygen after drowning. His old pickup truck sat alone in the loading area. Lily looked up from the backseat. Daddy, get in, he said urgently. Victoria didn't question it. She climbed into the passenger seat, gown spilling everywhere. Daniel jumped in, turned the key, and the engine roared to life. Voices shouted behind them. Phones were already recording. He drove. They didn't speak for several minutes. Victoria stared straight ahead, hands trembling in her lap. Her phone buzzed endlessly. Adrian. Board members. Unknown numbers. News alerts. She turned it off. Lily leaned forward slightly. Are you a princess? She asked curiously. Victoria looked back at her. For the first time all day, a real smile appeared. I was, she said softly. But I think I just ran away from the castle. Daniel exhaled slowly. Who exactly did I just help escape? She looked at him fully. My name is Victoria Hale. The name hit him instantly. Even he knew it. CEO of Hale Industries. Billionaire. Media icon. He nearly laughed in disbelief. You've got to be kidding. She shook her head. He stared at the road ahead. So I just drove off with the most powerful woman in the city. You didn't drive off with me, she said quietly. You gave me a choice. Sirens echoed faintly somewhere behind them. Daniel tightened his grip on the wheel. Where do you want to go? Victoria looked out at the open road, veil fluttering slightly in the breeze from the cracked window. For the first time in her perfectly controlled life, she didn't have a plan. She looked back at him. Somewhere no one expects me. Daniel thought about the lakeside cabin 2 hours away. The one he hadn't visited since his wife passed. Maybe both of them needed a place to breathe. He nodded. I know somewhere. And as the city skyline disappeared in the rearview mirror, Victoria Hale realized something extraordinary. She hadn't just escaped a wedding. She had escaped a life that wasn't hers. And beside her sat a man who had nothing to gain, except the courage to tell her she deserved freedom. By the time they reached the highway, the world had already caught up. Daniel didn't know it yet. But every news station in the city was running the same headline. Billionaire bride disappears minutes before ceremony. Security footage showed it all. Victoria lifting her dress, running through the kitchen, and climbing into an old pickup truck. The truck's license plate was visible. Clear as day. Daniel's phone started ringing 10 minutes into the drive. Unknown number. He ignored it. Then it rang again. And again. Victoria's phone, powered off in her lap, felt heavier than stone. She knew what was happening without checking. Adrian would be furious. Not heartbroken. Not worried. Furious. Because she hadn't embarrassed him. She had challenged him. Lily hummed quietly in the backseat, unaware of the storm building behind them. Victoria glanced at the child through the rearview mirror. So, Lily said softly, are you staying with us? Victoria blinked. I don't know. Daniel finally answered his phone on the 5th call. Hello, Mr. Carter. A sharp voice asked. Yes, this is legal counsel representing Mr. Adrian Cole. Victoria's spine went rigid. Daniel's jaw tightened. You are currently in possession of Ms. Victoria Hale. Return her immediately. Daniel glanced at Victoria. She shook her head firmly. I'm not in possession of anyone, Daniel said evenly. She left on her own. She is under emotional distress. If you do not comply, you may face kidnapping charges. The word hung in the air. Kidnapping. Lily stopped humming. Daniel felt heat rise in his chest. She is sitting right here, he replied calmly. And she can speak for herself. Victoria leaned toward the phone. I am not kidnapped, she said clearly. I made my own decision. Silence. Then the lawyer's tone sharpened. This decision has consequences, Ms. Hale. Victoria's voice turned cold, CEO cold. So does coercion. She ended the call. Daniel exhaled. Kidnapping, huh? Adrian doesn't lose, she said quietly. Not publicly. Well, Daniel muttered, eyes on the road, guess today's a first. But inside, fear was settling in. He wasn't afraid for himself. He was afraid for Lily. He had stepped into a war between titans. And he drove a 10-year-old truck. An hour later, they stopped at a small gas station outside the city. Victoria had removed her veil but still wore the wedding dress. People stared. Daniel handed Lily a juice box and gently pulled Victoria aside. Listen, he said quietly. You need to understand something. She looked at him. My life is small. It's